Welcome, my friends. What if I told you that the man who built Hyundai, one of the biggest car companies in the world, began his journey with no shoes, no money, and no education? A man who once worked in muddy rice fields, dreaming not of cars, but of a way out. He couldn't afford a train ticket, so he did something most people would never even imagine. He ran 120 kilometers on foot just to chase a dream that only he could see. This is not a fairy tale. This is not another feel-good speech. This is real. Today, you will hear the story of a boy who had nothing, but built everything with his bare hands. A boy who turned hunger into motivation, rejection into education, and failure into fuel. He had no power, no privilege, just one unstoppable decision: to never stop trying. But why should you listen? Because this isn't only about cars or business. This story will show you how to fight when life breaks you, how to believe when no one believes in you, and how to stand tall when the world shuts every door. And yes, this story will also improve your English, because here you're not just learning English, you're living it. You're feeling the rhythm, the emotion, the fire behind every word. That's the real secret to fluency. Not grammar books, not word lists, but real stories, told in clear, powerful English that makes you feel something. So listen carefully, because this video might not just teach you English, it might just change your life. Now, let's begin. Part 1. The Boy Who Had Nothing. In 1915, in a small village in northern Korea, a boy named Chung Ju-young was born. His family were poor rice farmers. Their house was made of mud and straw. The roof leaked when it rained. The winters were cold, and the nights were silent. Every day began before sunrise, when the roosters called and smoke rose from the fire. Little Chung had no shoes on his feet. He felt the rough earth, the cold water, and the sharp stones. His hands were small, but his work was heavy. He carried water from the well, fed the cows, and helped his father in the rice fields. While other children played, Chung worked. The field was his school. The shovel was his teacher. He learned patience by planting rice and learned strength by lifting buckets. He didn't know comfort. He knew survival. His clothes were old, his meals were simple: rice, soup, and sometimes nothing more. Yet his eyes were bright. He watched the world with quiet curiosity. He saw travelers pass on the road and wondered where they were going. He heard stories about Seoul, the great city far beyond the mountains, and something inside him began to move. His father believed in one rule: work hard, don't dream. But Chung was different. While he bent over the fields, he sometimes looked up at the sky. He asked himself a silent question: is this all there is to life? He felt that the world must be bigger than this small village.
He didn't know how, but he wanted to see it. Every season brought the same routine: plant, harvest, repeat. The mud covered his feet, but his thoughts were clean and full of light. He didn't hate the farm, he respected it. It taught him discipline, focus, and responsibility. But deep inside, a tiny flame began to grow. It was not a dream of money or comfort. It was a dream of change. The boy who worked barefoot in the rice fields did not yet know it. But one day he would build highways, bridges, and ships. One day the world would drive cars that carried his name. But in 1915, he was just a farmer's son, tired, hungry, and full of impossible hope.
As Chung Ju Young grew older, the small village began to feel even smaller. The mountains that surrounded his home looked beautiful, but also felt like walls. Every day he helped his father in the rice fields, but his mind was far away. He dreamed of going to school, of learning to read and write, of understanding the world beyond the mud and rice. Books were rare in his village, yet the few he saw filled him with wonder. He imagined sitting in a classroom with a pencil in his hand, not a shovel. He imagined solving problems with numbers, not with muscle. One morning he decided to change his life. He had no money, but he had determination. He secretly left the farm and began to walk to a nearby town where there was a small school. The road was long, the weather was hot, and he carried only hope. When he arrived, he asked to study. For a short time, he finally touched his dream. He sat in a classroom, listened to lessons, and felt free. But his freedom did not last. His father soon discovered where he was and brought him back to the village. The dream ended as quickly as it began. Chung returned to the fields, but something inside him had changed. He had tasted another world, and he could not forget it. Each day he worked in silence, but his thoughts were alive. He studied the movements of people, the logic of trade, the small details of life that others ignored. He began to understand that knowledge was not only in books. It was in observation, in curiosity, in the courage to ask why. Years passed, and his desire to escape grew stronger. He saved every small coin he could find, fixing tools, carrying loads, doing any job available. He waited for the right moment to leave again. This time he planned to go farther, to Seoul, the city of opportunities. He wanted to see machines, shops, and buildings. He wanted to understand how the modern world worked. He knew his family would not support him, but he also knew that staying would mean surrendering his dream. When the day came, he took a deep breath and looked at the mountains one last time. His clothes were simple, his bag was light, and his future was uncertain. Yet he felt a power inside him that was stronger than fear. The boy from the rice fields began to walk toward the unknown, guided only by his belief that life could be more than survival. Each step on the dusty road was a promise to himself that he would never stop trying. The road to Seoul was long and silent. Chung Ju-young walked with a small bag and a hungry stomach. He had no shoes, no map, and no ticket. The distance between his village and the capital was about 120 kilometers, but he did not think about numbers. He only thought about the future. Each step was a choice between fear and hope, and he always chose hope. The ground was rough, the air was cold at night, and his legs ached. Yet he kept moving. He passed rivers, farms, and hills, meeting strangers who looked at him with surprise. He slept under trees and drank water from streams. He rested only when his body forced him to. After many days, he finally saw the edges of Seoul. The noise, the people, and the smell of the city filled his senses. For the first time, he saw tall buildings, shops, and carts full of goods. He felt small but excited. This was a world he had imagined for years, and now he was standing inside it. He needed a job to survive, so he looked for any kind of work. Soon he found a place at a construction site. His task was simple but hard: carrying bricks, mixing cement, and moving stones. The pay was small, but it was enough for food and a place to sleep. His hands became rough and his back hurt every day. He worked from sunrise to sunset and learned fast. He watched how others built walls, how they balanced stones, and how small details made structures strong. He learned the value of precision and teamwork. Every mistake cost time and energy, so he focused on doing things right. At night, he sat quietly and thought about what he had learned. He told himself that one day he would not just build for others, but build something of his own. Life in Seoul was not easy. He faced hunger, exhaustion, and loneliness. Sometimes he was cheated by employers or lost his small savings. But he refused to give up. He accepted failure as a teacher, not as an enemy. He began to understand that the city offered opportunities only to those who never stopped trying. His body was tired, but his will grew stronger. He saved every coin he could and dreamed of opening his own shop. The same boy who once worked barefoot in the rice fields was now building a new version of himself. Every brick he carried became a symbol of his determination. The road to Seoul had not ended at the city gates. It had only just begun inside his heart. After months of hard work in Seoul, Chung Ju-young began to save a little money. It was not much, but to him it felt like a fortune. He rented a small room and dreamed of becoming his own master. He wanted to create something that would grow, something he could control with his own hands. He watched how small stores did business and how people traded goods in the market. He noticed that rice was always in demand. It was the food that every family needed every day. Slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. If he could sell rice, he could build a better life. He found a partner who seemed honest and experienced. Together, they opened a small rice shop. The room was simple and narrow, with wooden shelves and a small counter. From morning till night, Chung carried bags of rice,
greeted customers, and tried to make every sale with a smile. For the first time in his life, he felt like a businessman. The shop began to grow. People in the neighborhood trusted him because he worked hard and treated everyone with respect. He started to believe that this was the beginning of something great. But one day, everything changed. When he arrived at the shop early in the morning, the door was open. The shelves were empty. The money was gone. His partner had disappeared without a trace, taking every coin they had earned. Chung stood in silence, unable to move. Months of effort, sleepless nights, and hope had vanished in a moment. The weight of failure pressed on his chest. He had nothing left but his hands and his will. Many people in his place would have returned home, ashamed and defeated. But Chung refused to surrender. He walked through the streets of Seoul thinking about what had happened. He realized that money could be stolen, but knowledge could not. He had learned how to deal with customers, how to manage supplies, and how to plan for risk. These lessons were more valuable than coins. He decided to start again, from nothing. He took any work he could find, carrying bricks, delivering salt, repairing bicycles, cleaning shoes. Every job became a classroom. He observed how businesses were run, how people negotiated, how trust was built and lost. He learned to listen more and speak less. Each day brought a new challenge. Sometimes he was cheated again. Sometimes he went to bed hungry. But every experience made him stronger. He began to understand that success was not a straight road. It was full of sharp turns, broken bridges, and hidden traps. Yet each fall taught him where to step next. He realized that failure was not the opposite of success. It was part of it. He promised himself never to fear starting over. With time, people began to notice his reliability. He was known as the young man who never complained, who worked harder than anyone, and who always finished what he started. He saved a few coins again, but this time he saved something greater: wisdom. The rice shop was gone, but it had given him his first and most important lesson, that no loss is final if a man still has the courage to begin again. And in that simple truth, Chung Ju-young found the seed of the strength that would one day build an empire.
The 1940s brought change to Korea and to Chung Ju-young's life. The country was poor and recovering from years of occupation. Roads were broken, bridges destroyed, and cities were falling apart. But where most people saw only ruins, Chung saw opportunity. He believed that rebuilding the nation could also rebuild his own future. After years of working different jobs and saving every possible coin, he finally decided to start his own company. It was small, almost invisible at first, but it carried a big dream. In 1946, he officially founded his business and named it Hyundai, a Korean word meaning modern. It was a bold name for a man who had grown up barefoot in rice fields. Hyundai began as a simple construction company. The office was tiny, with little equipment and few workers.
But Chung's energy made it feel alive. He accepted small repair projects, fixed roads, and built houses. Every job was done with care and precision. He personally visited the sites, inspected every wall, and talked to every worker. He believed that real leadership meant working side by side with others. Slowly, the name Hyundai began to be associated with honesty, quality, and hard work. People trusted him because he kept his word. The more success he had, the bigger his dreams became. When others said a project was too large, he took it. When they said it was impossible, he tried anyway. He believed that companies stayed small because they feared big challenges. He often took jobs that were far beyond his resources, but his courage and determination helped him find a way. He was not afraid to hire people who were smarter or more skilled than him. He learned from them, watched carefully, and made every mistake a lesson. When the Korean War began in 1950, the country once again fell into chaos. Many businesses closed, but Chung refused to stop. He knew that after the war, the country would need to rebuild everything again: roads, bridges, ports, and houses. While others waited, he prepared. He gathered his workers and repaired damaged structures, even when profit was small. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but it gave Hyundai a new purpose. It was no longer just a business. It became a symbol of hope for people who wanted to see their homeland rise again. After the war ended, the government began to notice Hyundai's reliability. Chung received contracts to build public roads and restore key buildings. His company grew fast, and so did his vision. He wanted Hyundai not just to build structures, but to build the future of Korea. He taught his workers discipline, pride, and persistence. He treated each bridge and road as if it carried the weight of the nation itself. By the late 1950s, Hyundai was no longer just a small construction firm. It had become a name that stood for progress and possibility. Chung Ju-young, the boy who once ran 120 kilometers barefoot to chase a dream, was now shaping the foundations of a modern country. The mud of the rice fields had turned into concrete roads. The boy who had nothing had created something powerful. A company born from hardship, built with faith, and driven by an unbreakable will to move forward.
In the 1960s, South Korea was still rebuilding itself after years of war and poverty. The country was changing, but it needed visionaries who could turn ruins into progress. Among those few stood Chung Ju-young. His company, Hyundai, had grown stronger with each project, and his reputation for courage and discipline reached the ears of the South Korean government. One day, a new challenge arrived, one that would test everything he had learned. The government wanted a bridge built across the Han River in Seoul. It was a massive project, bigger than anything Hyundai had ever done. Most people said it was impossible. Hyundai had never built a bridge before. The company lacked experience, technology, and proper machinery. Engineers laughed at the idea. Foreign companies were expected to take the job, not a young Korean firm led by a man who had no university degree. But Chung saw things differently.
To him, every impossible task was simply a challenge waiting for courage. He believed that the best way to learn was by doing. He studied construction methods, gathered the best engineers he could find, and pushed his team beyond their limits. Work began by the river under the hot sun and cold rain. Every day, Chung visited the site himself. He walked among workers, examined blueprints, and checked every beam and stone. His presence inspired others. He showed that leadership meant more than giving orders. It meant standing with your people. The project moved fast, but it was not easy. Materials were scarce, deadlines were short, and money was tight. Yet his willpower kept everyone focused. He reminded his workers that this bridge was not just a structure. It was a symbol of national pride. After only 4 months, the Han River Bridge was completed. When it opened, the city stood in silence. People could not believe what they saw. The same nation that had once been called weak and broken had built something extraordinary. Cars crossed the bridge, and crowds watched with tears in their eyes. It was not only concrete and steel that connected the two sides of the river. It was faith, determination, and the spirit of a man who refused to accept limits. That day, Hyundai became more than a company. It became a message to the world that South Korea was rising. The bridge changed everything.
The bridge changed everything. The government began to trust Hyundai with even larger projects. Highways, dams, ports, and industrial sites. Each success proved that Korea could build its own future without depending on foreign hands. For Chung Ju-young, the bridge marked the moment when his personal dream became a national one. He no longer built only for himself. He built for millions who wanted a better tomorrow. Years later, when people looked at the Han River Bridge, they did not see just a piece of engineering. They saw the journey of a boy who once walked 120 kilometers barefoot to chase a dream. They saw the story of failure turned into strength, of poverty turned into progress. The bridge stood as a reminder that no beginning is too small, and no goal is too far for a determined heart. Chung Ju-young proved that greatness is not born in comfort. It is built through struggle, courage, and faith in something bigger than yourself. His life became a lesson for every dreamer, that you don't need perfect conditions to start, you just need to start. The bridge over the Han River was more than a victory for Hyundai. It was a victory for the human spirit. It showed that when a person refuses to give up, even the impossible can be built. And from that moment on, the name Hyundai carried the power of a single truth. No dream is too far for those who keep walking forward.
Thanks! Please subscribe and like. Spin a new yarn with us every week. See you there!